They were rounded up, transported, and labeled enemy, yet in many camps, the women received something they had not tasted in years: a plate of hot food, a blanket, a name. Why did the enemy treat them like human beings? The answer will surprise you. Across Europe and the Pacific, thousands of women found themselves prisoners during World War II. Some were soldiers, some nurses, others civilians swept up by retreat, by suspicion, by fate. In this film, we follow their first days behind barbed wire, their arrival, the first meal, and the shock that followed. By 1940 to 45, millions had been displaced. Of those, tens of thousands, though a small percentage, were women. Captured partisan fighters, nurses taken when hospitals fell, crews of downed transport planes, and civilians rounded up in reprisals. They arrived at camps as rumor, and rumor arrived with them, that captors would be brutal, that there would be no food, no shelter, no mercy. Picture the rail siding, the cattle car doors open. Women step out, hollow from hunger, clutching the last letter from home. Guards check identity papers, not to humiliate but to account, to register, to assign. In many Allied camps, that registration triggered something crucial. Under the Geneva Conventions, POWs were entitled to humane treatment. For some women, this legal protection meant the first hot meal in months. Imagine the smell of coffee after months without it. Imagine warm bread. In testimonies decades later, women describe that first bowl of soup like an apparition, both relief and incredulity. One woman later wrote in her memoir, "We thought it must be poison. No one could be so kind." That disbelief is the heart of our story. Not that hunger ended, but that human behavior could surprise. For many of these women, treatment in Allied camps contrasted sharply with the scarcity back home rations at 500 grams of bread per week. Rumors of entire towns starved. Take the case of a nurse evacuated with wounded soldiers in 1944. Her transport was intercepted. She was listed as an enemy medical worker. At the Allied camp, she was examined by a Red Cross doctor, given a blanket, and placed in the nurse's block. She wrote a short note later, "We were prisoners, but we were treated as patients in a strange, distant way." Another story, a young crew member whose plane went down over the channel, rescued by enemy troops and shipped to a mainland camp. She was terrified. She expected interrogation, beating, silence. Instead, she was given medical attention and, crucially, food. She later said the hardest thing was not the captivity, but the moral dissonance. Her enemy was not monstrous. He was human. These moments, food, shelter, conversation, did not erase the war. Yet they created a fragile space where curiosity and small acts of kindness could begin. In the next segment, we will look at daily routines, the mess hall, the medical inspections, the hygiene rituals that shaped life behind barbed wire. How did prisoners keep their dignity? What did the guards permit or refuse? The answer is not simple. What followed those first strange meals was a rhythm: wake, inspection, work detail, mess, the evening roll call. In that rhythm, small choices mattered. How prisoners kept clean. How they obtained soap. how they shared a single blanket. These decisions shaped survival. Camps had schedules, often modeled on military routine to maintain order. Prisoners were counted, clumped by nationality or role, and assigned barracks. Women were frequently segregated into separate compounds or housed with female civilians. Hygiene was both practical and morale. A small act, washing hair with shampoo once a month, could restore a sense of personhood. Medical inspections were routine, vaccinations, lice checks, and treatment for wounds. In Allied camps where Red Cross assistance reached the wards, shaves and scrubs were possible, but food remained central. Mess halls were not luxury. Yet rations in many Allied camps were comparatively generous. Menus rotated: soup, bread, sometimes meat or milk. For women who had survived months of shortages, these meals were surreal. They forged small rituals around food, sharing a last piece of bread, carefully saving sugar for tea, making substitutes from scraps. Where supplies were scarce, prisoners bartered buttons for tobacco, a wear-upon sock for extra oatmeal. Women became masters of thrift, sewing uniforms into warmer coats, turning blankets into footwear. The underground economy of the camp was a lifeline. Unexpected bonds formed. In some camps, older women organized sewing circles. Younger women taught English words. Nurses formed unofficial clinics. These micro-communities preserved identity: music nights, clandestine theater, secret letter exchanges. How did they keep hope alive? One recurring memory in multiple testimonies: a makeshift Sunday table. Guards sometimes allowed families or local relief workers to bring small comforts. For a moment, prisoners tasted a world beyond scarcity: a plate of potatoes, a slice of cake. The shock was not merely culinary. It was social. Prisoners caught between gratitude and shame. Not all guards were kind. Discipline was strict. Some punishments were severe. Yet within that system, individual acts of decency mattered: a guard withholding a harsh order, a cook slipping an extra portion to a collapsed woman. These acts rarely made headlines, but they saved lives. Letters were currency of memory. Many women wrote short notes home full of coded optimism, all well, small comforts, omitting the truth to spare their families. Some letters never arrived. Others returned decades later in trunks. These documents, when examined by historians, reveal the bitter irony. Words meant to reassure often betrayed longing. As camps aged, news from the front changed the mood. Rumors of invasions, rumors of liberation, rumors of reprisals. Each would redefine life inside the wire. In the final segment, we will see how liberation arrived for some, and for others, how return to a shattered homeland became another ordeal. What happened when the gates opened? The answer is less triumphant than you expect. Rumors gave way to headlines. The front lines crumbled, orders changed, and for many prisoners, the gates opened. Liberation was not a single moment. It was a process of negotiation, logistics, and human confusion. Allied liberations varied. Some camps were liberated by advancing armies, others by paltry relief convoys. Chaos followed. Guards sometimes fled, sometimes stayed. Camps became staging centers for refugees. Food and medicine were delivered unevenly. For many women, liberation offered partial relief. They were fed, examined, and in some cases interviewed as witnesses. Yet repatriation took time. Ships and trains were scarce. Paperwork was complex. Many feared returning to ruined homes or feared reprisals for perceived collaboration. One reconstructed memory: a woman returning to a village where neighbors had taken her belongings, where her husband had remarried, thinking her dead. Liberation did not automatically heal these wounds. Some women found gratitude abroad and chose not to return. The psychological consequences were often hidden. Survivors spoke of nightmares, survivors' guilt, and a lifetime of retraining identity from prisoner to citizen. Many rarely spoke of their captivity. Others wrote privately and entrusted those stories to trunks and attics. Historians estimate thousands of female pose and internees across theaters. Each story adds to our understanding of war's human scale. Not a statistic, but a life. Why revisit these stories now? Because memory shapes meaning. When we look at a woman's letter, a Red Cross card, or a photograph of a group behind wire, we are reminded that even in systems designed to dehumanize, people acted with decency. That tension between brutality and compassion is at the center of what we call history. In the ruins and in the quiet barracks, small acts endured. A nurse's skill, a song hummed softly, a bowl shared. These echoes from war reach us not as distant facts, but as testimonies. For the women who survived, those echoes carried the memory of food, of kindness, and of nights when the world felt, briefly, human. They returned to rebuilt cities and to empty homes. They wrote letters, raised children, and in rare interviews described a plate of soup as both salvation and paradox. Their voices remain if we listen.